What's up guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Ride and Dad channel, or welcome back if you know who I am. If you don't, my name is Chris. This is my DR350se 1994, and then over there is my 2020 Harley Davidson Lowrider S. So two way different platforms. This video, as per the thumbnail and the title, is going to be the carb swap. Basically the first thing to do a carb swap is going to be to remove the carb that's on the bike. But you'll see I obviously started a little bit. Let's roll the intro, I'll explain what I'm doing, and we'll keep it going.
Riding down a YouTube channel, it's the Riding Down a YouTube channel, it's the Riding Down a YouTube channel, it's the Riding Down a thing that you found.
Alright, so as you can see, I took off the seat already. This is just kind of, I'm doing a million different things at once. So you'll need to take off the seat, and to take off the seat, you'll need to take off the side covers. That's about where I'm at. We'll also need to take off the tank, and we're going to need to dislodge the carburetor from the engine side boot and then the air side boot as well. Very easy to do. You do have to make sure that you drain the carburetor of whatever fuel is in there, or turn your petcock to off or cut off fuel supply, however you do it for your application, to the carburetor before you swap them out. That way, or keep it running, that way the engine exhausts all of the gas within the carburetor and you don't have to drain really any out. There's going to be some residual in there anyway, but it does make it easier. Either way you got to do it. We're going to wind up draining it. I'll pull you guys a little bit closer. We'll start taking the fuel line off from the tank, from the carburetor to the tank, and we'll drain it, and then we'll get this sucker out. We'll set up the new one, put her in, see how she runs. All right, once we took that off, I have just an old canister that I'm going to use just for the kind of spillage of it. You probably are going to get a little bit, if you're doing it my way, you're probably going to get a little bit wherever you're at. So make sure you got, nothing on your hands. You don't want to get gas on, and nothing below on the floor. But I'm going to try my best to squeeze this as much as possible, letting out, and then going to let the residual drain into there. A little trick that you might have to do is just get a really small screwdriver in there and try to break the seal of the air and everything, because otherwise that's going to be incredibly hard to get off. Next step is going to be to undo the gas tank. So this carb can be used with a single throttle wire or a dual throttle wire application, depending on whatever you have. It'll be either, mirrored or just a single step like mine, because I have a single cable. So basically you're going to have to undo the pressure. Normally you would have to use tools for this, but I've been playing with the carb for quite some time and undoing this, so I never completely tightened it back out because I knew I was going to be undoing it again. Loosen that to where you can pop that out. I find it's easiest if you push that up so you can get to that easier, and basically just take out that little piece of metal, and it just kind of unclips, and then you can set this off to the side. Something that helps as well is if you take this rear brake reservoir off, it gives you a little bit extra space, and all you basically do is just set this to the side. Alright, so this is the airbox boot and this is the engine boot. You're gonna have to loosen both of those up. Keep in mind this is just going from the same carburetor to a new carburetor, just to eliminate any issues. If you are using a different carburetor, there might be different extensions or couplers, or any kind of tubing that would lower or increase your diameter to adapt it to be used with that specific application for your bike. Thankfully, on this install switch, we don't have to change anything because it's the exact same carburetor. We're just starting fresh with a brand new one. Once both of those are loosened, find that it helps a little bit to rotate. You'll basically, the easiest way that I found is to push this air boot out of the way enough to where you can push it completely behind the carburetor. And the older these bikes are, the harder it is, because that rubber doesn't want to flex anymore. Keep in mind you're probably going to have gas leak out of this once you start doing it with your overflow tab, so just keep that in mind. Basically you just kind of wiggle it out. Whatever application you have works best for you, and you'll figure it out as you go. I don't really care too much about this carb because, like I'm replacing it, but certain stuff like that, just want to make sure you don't bend it and damage it too much, and there's this old ratty carburetor. Now we got to go set up the new one before we put it in here, so let's go do that. Okay, so before we install the new carb, what we're gonna have to do is set it up. So from factory, these carbs come with a certain main jet and a certain pilot jet. And let's do a very brief overview so you kind of understand what I'm talking about when I talk about it. This black piece inside is the slide. This is a flat slide, which means it's flat on both sides of it. There are rounded slides and there are semi-rounded, which basically means that there's a flat part in the middle or kind of in the front of it and then a slide in the back, or a flat slide on the back. This is a flat slide. The choke, that is completely full choke. This has a dual position, that is half, and then that is all the way in. The cable from the throttle is going to go on this side, and that is what's going to open and close. It's going to both pull the needle, which is the silver piece inside, up, allowing more fuel in, and open this hole as well, allowing more air in as well. This is a pumper carb, which means this little gold piece sticking up right here pumps fuel. It pushes it immediately in addition to the regular flow of fuel. And hopefully you'll be able to see it if I bring it close enough. But you can hopefully, maybe in the back of that, you can see the little hole in that gold piece right there. And that's in the gold needle, that's actually where it sprays fuel. So this is the air side and this is the engine side. And a little bit of fuel squirts out every time you pump the throttle a little bit, and that helps very responsive throttle, especially in the very beginning of it, and it allows you to open it up quicker than some other carbs. This is going to be the idle adjustment screw. All this does, and this will clip there to, you'll see on the bike, to actually allow it to be in a usable spot, but this basically just controls this of how much at idle the throttle actually stays open. This is the top of the carb, obviously, where the actual throttle will impact the needle. In there, we don't have to take this apart. I know there's basically that silver needle, the adjustments on top. It's a either 4 or 5, I can't remember, 4 or 5 position needle. Basically, there's like a little clip and it sits in different positions, leaving the needle lower or higher in the carburetor at a idle position. Right now it's in the 3 position and it starts at the top. The top position is 1, and then the bottom, the more you go, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, whatever. So this is in the 3rd position, which means it's pretty much right in the middle. Supposedly for my bike and application, this is going to be the best needle position, either this or 4, but I'm going to leave it at 3 because I believe that's probably going to be good considering my bike runs really rich typically. But basically underneath there, you'll be able to unscrew where the needle sits in there and put that clip in different positions, leaving that needle either, like I said, lower or higher. The higher it is, the more fuel; the lower, the less fuel. So right now, like I said, it's right in the middle. What we are going to need to do is take off the float cup or the float bowl, which is the bottom of the carb. So let's go ahead and start doing that. Be really careful when you open this. You don't want to lose this clip, but also inside you don't want to lose this piece. There's a spring under there, and then there's this piece as well. If you want to look at it, you can see right there is an extension of where you can drain the bottom of the carb where the fuel sits. You have an O-ring. This is a good time to inspect it. This is a brand new carb, so I don't really have much to inspect, but this is a good time to inspect everything. Let's set that aside. Here you'll see this white piece are the floats. If you want to adjust the actual float height, now would be the time to do it. This is set up from factory with the factory float height right now, so I'm not going to play with any of that. What you will see is you'll have to take the main, this is called the main jet, and this is called the pilot jet. There's a lot other aspects of this carburetor that we're not going to talk about today because these are the 2 we really need to focus on. There's a little bit more statistical work to it, but essentially the pilot jet is what controls fuel at the idle level only, and then when you incrementally increase the amount of throttle, you start mixing between the pilot jet and the main jet of what controls what, and then the more close to full throttle that you get, main jet is going to be what controls that. So to take either of these out, you're going to need a well-sized flathead screwdriver. And you'll see once we do that, you'll have access to the pilot jet. I know for my configuration, the stock pilot jet is what I should run. The stock pilot jet happens to be a 37.5. The stock main jet that comes on these is a 127.5. For my application with the open airbox, I know from what guys are running on the interwebs, on the forums, 140 is gonna be what I want. So I went ahead and ordered a 140. I'm gonna put the 140 in here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on the actual camera because of how small the print is, but it'll say 140 right there. So we'll go ahead and put this back on. Tilt it upside down, that way the main jet has a chance to grab on that inside portion. There we go. And now we'll tighten her up. We're gonna put the float bowl back on and head on over to the bike. Okay, once you have your new carburetor ready for install, make sure that you have identified which direction is which. Like I said, for this one is gonna be an easy install because it's the exact same carburetor, so there's really not too much to screw up here. I'm gonna try to feed it in that way, get the engine side on first, and then get the air boot on last. And hopefully that works out. Also, like I touched on, this is the idle screw. This I'm going to clip in later, but it will clip there just to be able to adjust the idle on the left side of the bike. So for right now, to make install easier, I'm gonna kind of tuck it behind this area, kind of keep it out of the way. I did forget to mention that for this specific application, it did need this kind of extension, adapter rather, to make the correct size for the air boot size. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on, and then we'll start working the carb into the actual bike. So now that my adapter is on there, I'm gonna go ahead and put this in. My plan is to work it in like that, hopefully get the engine side on first and then the air boot side on second. So let's try to do this. So because this is old rubber and nothing flexes the way it used to, I'm going to try to kind of use just a flathead screwdriver, a very small one, try to work in there and pull that boot up above this adapter. You got to be careful if you do something like this. You want to make sure not to damage any of the boot, the carb also, but the boot especially because it is rubber, and if you puncture it or any kind of air gets through it in any way because of something that you screw up, it's going to completely change your air fuel ratio and really screw up this whole brand new carb situation you're trying to do. And yes, mine was ripped prior. I didn't do that, so you don't have to worry about me getting, you know, gook in the carburetor. That was like that prior to me. Want to make sure that the carburetor, when the bike is standing upright, straight up and down, that it's as close to centered as possible. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to start by tightening the engine boot first. Now we're going to make sure that this bracket is in the right place on this boot before we tighten her up. Can bring this down now and put it in the correct placement. All right, we'll start with the brake reservoir first. Go ahead and thread it back in there. Put the top back on it. Now is also obviously a good time to check it if you need to. Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and put the throttle wire back on. Like I said, in my situation, I only have one of them. You might have two of them. So for the one of them, I'll go ahead and thread it into the carburetor portion. Make sure it's seated. And then we'll put it back on this one. Want to make sure there's a little bit of play. If you had a second one, this is going to be your actuating one. Your second one would be your return throttle. Kind of similar difference. It basically makes sure that when the carburetor closes, it snaps your throttle back closed as well. Next step is to install the gas tank. Make sure you don't pinch anything. All right, the final step is going to make sure that you put your fuel line back onto your carburetor. Pretty self-explanatory. Just kind of wiggle it on to where it seats nice and firm. Make sure it sits all the way down on the carburetor, and then you'll put your clamp back on. Well, hey, thank you for watching. We're all done. I'm gonna go test it out, make sure that the jetting is good. Hopefully it's done. I'm so tired of dealing with the jetting on this bike with all the stuff that everybody else did to it before me and not having a stock baseline to actually work with, unfortunately. Anyway, if you don't know who I am, I briefly introduced myself in the beginning. The name is Chris. I have a 2020 Harley Davidson Lowrider S and now a 1994 DR350 SE. I'm going to do build series. There's a playlist for the build series for this guy. There's a playlist for the build series for that guy. There's playlists for reviews that I do. I do rides. I do motovlogs. Whatever motorcycle content related you think there is, I probably do at least a little bit of it. So if you think that sounds like something you might enjoy watching or listening to or looking at or whatever, please hit the subscribe button. It would be really cool if you turn on the post notifications also. That way you never miss a video that I post. I post videos twice a week, Wednesday, Florida time at noon, and Saturday, Florida time at 7 p.m. 2 videos a week. You never know what you're gonna get, but it's always gonna be decent quality content from the Ride and Dad channel. Check out my Instagram if you would like as well. I post content on there, some behind the scenes YouTube stuff, but mostly just some pictures and cool stuff of the bikes and rides I take and everything. Right here is a video that YouTube thinks you would like. Right there is a video I just recently uploaded. Click on one or both of those, that'd be cool. And until next time, guys, ride safe, have fun. Dad